On the printed agenda, it says Hundley for invocation. That was a typo. It's actually Henschel. And today we have the village manager of Kingsley, Mr. Hawkins. If you'd start us off with an invocation.
Good morning. I'd like to invite you all to join me in this moment of invocation in the manner that you deem appropriate. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the privilege of public service, and we pray for public servants everywhere, in the military, law enforcement, first responders, firefighters, in the schools, hospitals, in government, and elsewhere. We ask that wisdom, insight, and discretion be granted. We pray that this will be granted to public servants throughout the full spectrum of public service, from the front lines to the seats occupied by elected and public officials. And now we pray specifically that you grant guidance and discernment to the public servants of this chamber today. In your name, amen.
Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I think we're at roll call, please.
Lapointe,
Present.
Klaus,
Here.
Wheelock, Jewett,
Here.
Hundley,
Here.
Kofia, here, Henschel.
Here. Okay, next we have approval of the minutes.
I move we approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion by Hundley. Do we have a second? Support. Supported by Klaus. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. We're at first public comment. We recently updated our rules slightly with a little more clarification. Bonnie will read those slightly adjusted rules. And also, it was pointed out to me, when we pull things from the consent calendar, if the public wishes to pull something from the consent calendar, you're welcome to do so under our rules. But this would be the time that would be appropriate for you to speak on that item. That if you intend to pull it from the consent calendar, we won't be taking public comment on those items necessarily. Also, we have on the agenda the Cherry Capital Airport discussion. If you have a comment about that, we'll be taking public comment later in the meeting when we reach that point of the agenda. It's item 11. So if you have a comment for the airport, you're welcome to hold that comment until then. But if you have to leave, you're also welcome to give that at this time. So, Bonnie?
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provisions of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. Persons may address the board on matters of issues which are relevant and germane to county government as determined by the chairperson. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, allow an additional opportunity or time to speak if determined germane and necessary to the discussion. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4 Order of Business. However, public comment may be received during the meeting when a specific agenda topic is scheduled for discussion by the board. Prior to the first public comment, the chairperson will indicate the topics on the agenda for which public comment will be accepted. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson. Please be respectful and refrain from personal or political attacks.
Okay, do we have anyone for public comment? You can approach, say your name and where you're from. And a quick note while you're on your way is we have new speakers this week, which sounds great here, but the folks at home, we understand it's a little quiet, so you might have to turn your TV up. They're working on that. We will get that fixed. All right, say your name and where you're from.
Hi, My name's Brenda Rush, and I live at 10480 Deer Path North. I've been gone for a month and a half, but I have been trying to follow what's going on. The Grand Traverse County Commission website states that this commission is a county government that collaborates with issues for the benefit of the community and its individuals, and that encourages the efficiency and the effectiveness of services to better serve constituents, where all have ready and equal access and easy access to government services. I stress the easy as in my commute this morning. In my opinion, and I've only been reading and listening, many of the Commission's decisions to date seem counterproductive to accomplish this goal, or these goals. I believe the 8 a.m. start time is a deliberate attempt to limit public participation. Normal drive time from my house to this building is 20 minutes. I left my house at 7 o'clock to be at this meeting by 7:45 this morning. I skated into Traverse City along with hundreds of other commuters, the high school filling up, the hospital letting out. The decision to change the rules to put one member of the commission in control of the entire agenda also seems to limit commission input. Public input and transparency to view documentation that the FAA ordered the tree cutting at the airport site was seemingly bypassed. In my opinion, only my opinion, from reading, from listening, since the first seating of this commission, there have been several deliberate actions to limit public participation, limit transparency, create divisiveness, and serve personal agendas. I respectfully ask this commission to please reconsider best practices to serve all constituents. I thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anybody else for public comment this morning? And if anyone else intends to speak, we'd appreciate if you'd move up closer to the microphone so we know, and also cut down in time in between speakers. Thank
Good
you.
morning. My name is Lynn Van Ness, and I live at 5105 Rosewood Drive, Traverse City. I wanted to say that I had driven out to the airport yesterday or the day before. I can't remember. Everything fades into a blur. And I noticed that there had been some thinning on the side that is on Airport Road, but clear cut, 40 acres. What the hell happened? Excuse me. There was no input from anybody. We did not know that this was happening. I didn't pay for this. And I object strenuously to being asked to pay taxes for a clear cut that was not advertised. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else this morning? Morning, Dave.
Good morning, Dave Petro, Interlochen. I'd like to second what Brenda Rush had said. It's starting 8 o'clock in the morning was one of the first things that this board did to try to keep people from really participating. And you've done pretty well on doing other things, shut out even commissioners by one person controlling the agenda and things of that nature. And that's kind of one of the things that bothers me. I mean, these people are here, I'm here, because we're the average citizen. And I try to picture, 30 years ago, what is better about being on the Democrat side of politics versus the Republican side or something like that. And I couldn't come up with much except the Democrats tended to err on the side of the people, whereas the Republican side of things just goes full forward for what can we do to improve profits, improve corporations, and things like that. So if it comes to some project or something like that, well, we don't want to tax businesses, but by golly, we'll tax these people, pay for roads and things like that. It's just not right, okay? We are the people. That's what this is supposed to be about. We the people. This is not the Chamber of Commerce. If it is, you should move to a different agenda, not here, okay? So please, start thinking about what America is, what Grand Traverse is. It's taking care of us and things of that nature. So thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Anybody else this morning?
Ann Rogers, 1236 Peninsula Drive in the city. I don't know what keeps you up at night, but it's the climate crisis that keeps me awake. I have children, I have grandchildren, and that scares me to death what is happening in our earth. If you aren't paying attention, it's happening anyway. So I would urge all of you to start reading more, to start thinking about what is happening. We sit here in Grand Traverse County and think it's not affecting us. It is. The farmers are the ones that can tell you. They're already seeing more insects that they've never seen before. They're seeing more invasive species, more undependable weather, more soil problems. And all of this is going to keep on, and it's going to become exacerbated. We are at a tipping point where what we do can put maybe a halt to what's happening to the earth, but we can't go back. This is what 99% of the world's climatologists are telling us. So if you're not staying up and worrying about this, I guess it bothers me a lot, because if you don't help to lead, who is? Who's going to take care of my children and grandchildren down the line? Trees play a tremendously important part in this. The ocean is the largest sink for emissions, for CO2. Trees are the next largest. And not only do they take so much carbon out of the air that we keep putting in, they protect the soil, they protect our water, and they protect our climate. So educate yourselves if you're not already, because the climate crisis is happening, whether you believe it or not.
Thank you, Ann. Okay.
Tom Emmett, 9430 Peninsula Drive. This issue just keeps coming up and coming up and coming up, and it's this 9 a.m. Meeting time, and if you look at all these empty seats, that should tell you something. And when I read several months ago that one of you said it interferes, the evening times interferes with your family time and your dinner time, well, let me remind you that you ran for and were elected to a political office. So those are the consequences sometimes. You know, if you're meeting, on the first Wednesday of every month, then I don't think it's a big sacrifice to give up a few hours with your family. Fill it in somewhere else. Secondly, when I send an email to the county commission, please do not respond. Please blind copy me when you respond, because if you're hitting reply to all, then there's my information out there along with everybody else's. And now what's happening is I'm getting emails because everybody starts hitting reply to all. So I get an email and it's addressed to one of you, but we're all receiving it. I don't want my information out there. If you're going to respond to my email, then just respond to me. Don't hit reply to all. Blind copy it. Please. That's my personal information. It's not subject to everybody else having it. As far as the invocation is concerned, you know, I don't agree with it, so I don't know who the Heavenly Father is, okay?
Thanks, Tom. Anybody else this morning? Seeing none, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. I was informed by our administration, we do not have a closed session today, so that would the only change I'm aware of. Any other commissioners have any suggestions for the agenda? Or will entertain a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Klaus.
Second.
Seconded by Kafia. Any conversation? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we have our agenda. Next item on that agenda is the consent calendar. Please read the rules.
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. All information identified on the consent calendar can be viewed in its entirety at www.grandtraverse.org. A, receive. Number 1, Northwestern Regional Airport Commission Organization Meeting Minutes of January 29th. Number 2, Northwestern Regional Airport Commission Regular Meeting Minutes of January 29th. Number 3, Northwestern Regional Airport Commission Special Meeting Minutes of January 31st. Number 4, Department of Health and Human Services Pavilions Minutes of February 22nd. Number 5, County Treasurer Fourth Quarter 2018 Investment Report. Number 6, Resource Recovery 2018 Annual Solid Waste Report. B, approvals. Number 1, Gypsy Moth Suppression Fund. Number 2, budget amendments.
Okay. Would any member of the commission wish anything pulled from the consent calendar? Gordy?
Number 6, please.
Number A6, the resource recovery. Commissioner Klaus.
A4.
A4, Department of Health and Human Services Pavilions.
And A2.
A2, Northwest Regional Airport Commission Regular Meeting Minutes of 129. Is that all from the commission? Any members of the public wish to have anything removed from the consent calendar? Seeing none. So we have just to recap, we have items removed A2, A4, and A6. Do we have a motion to approve the consent calendar?
So moved.
So moved by Kafia, seconded by Jewett. Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Klaus,
Yes.
Jewett,
Yes.
Hunley,
Yes?
Kofia,
Yes.
Lapointe,
Yes.
Henschel.
Yes. Okay, consent calendar is approved with the exception of those 3 items. We have no special orders of business. We're on to item 8, which is items removed from the consent calendar. We'll start with item A2, the Northwest Regional Airport Minutes, page 11 in your packet. And go ahead.
All right. In this, I know we'll be talking more about the airport coming down the line, but in this, there was an update to the, I'm in the organizational meeting. There's an update to the Air Service Marketing Incentive Plan, which in previous minutes, there's also been an obstruction action plan and a variety of plans. And for me, I think that's the core of my concern with what we're getting from the Airport Commission, is that there are minutes, but there's references to all sorts of other things that flesh out what we're seeing. And I haven't been seeing that, and if we can get those in addition to, that would be helpful.
Okay.
And they may be available. I'm not saying
All
they
right.
aren't, but it seems like there seems to be a lot of additional work, like, it's available. It's back there in the closet somewhere, you know what I mean? So if we can just
Yeah.
try and,
You're referring to the packets.
yeah, I think so, yeah.
So I'm on the Airport Commission. I've been there for 3 months now. This
Right.
is April. We haven't met yet. So one of the first things I asked about was, can we put the packets on the internet?
Right.
And the response I got was, sometimes there are things that are security issues.
Sure.
So they've had this longstanding practice of, if you ask for the packet, they'll review it at that time. I personally think it would be better if they would review it and redact it and go ahead and put it out.
Right,
So
Yeah.
I will pass that along to them.
okay.
Since we're talking about that, unless you had another piece.
No, that was my only thing on this.
The airport commission, I went back with all the questions about the clear cutting next to the airport. My MO for folks who ask me questions is to try to give them, well, here's the board, here's when they meet, here are the members, right? And I couldn't find that online. We have a line on grandtraverse.org with a brief blurb about what this airport commission is, but it links to the Cherry Capital Airport website, not the governance page, and there's no tab that says governance.
Yeah.
I did a deep dive, and I still couldn't actually find anything that just listed, other than if you want to dive into minutes. It doesn't list current members, it doesn't have any way to call them. And so I think maybe this is an opportunity for us to think through how can we improve public awareness of these entities. This is on public taxpayer-owned property, and so that's a thought that I had just as I was struggling to come up with that information to pass along to people. And so, as our representative on the Airport Commission, I wondered if you had any thoughts about the best way to try to work on improving that. Even if we added it, we could add it to the grandtraverse.org website with sort of like what we have for commissioners even.
Yeah.
We have that for DHHS, right? Like, it's easy for some of the other boards to
Yeah.
easily find who's on the board, when do they meet, where are their minutes.
I completely agree with you. And if it's all right, I'll just pass that along. I would encourage our admin to look into adding a little more information about the airport board, because we appoint those
Right.
members, most of them.
Right.
Leland appoints, I think 2
Yeah,
out of the group.
we have
and then-
five, yeah.
Yeah, and we have 5, 2 and 5, I think it is.
And the counties own the property that we are the landlord,
Leland
right? So-
and Grand Traverse together jointly own the property
Right,
and the airport. So,
Yeah. thank you.
okay. Guess we need a motion to receive and file item A2.
So moved.
Second?
Moved by Kafia, seconded by Hundley. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passes. Item A4, Department of Health and Human Services Pavilions Minutes of February 22nd, 2019. This is on page 20 in your packet. And go ahead.
And on page 21, under the county pavilions update, Corey Hansen reported to the board that the pavilions is currently not for sale. But then the next item down under building expansion, he shared that Munson and Mary Freebed representatives approached him a few months ago and have continued discussion about their desire to expand their inpatient rehabilitation beds. They are searching for space to build a new facility connected to the hospital and inquire about locating on the pavilion's property. It was pretty much answered in the paragraph right above. And if there is going to be any discussion about purchasing some of the property at the pavilions for Munson's expansion, I would hope that they would talk to admin about it and follow our policy for disposing of property.
But we did speak with Corey, but Corey was a third party to this discussion. Munson Hospital and Mary Freebed representatives came and met with Mr. Forsyth and I a month and a half ago about a partnership that they were considering. There was a discussion about where that hospital, if they built something, where it could be, if it could be a situation where they contracted with existing space, or if they needed to build a new facility. So very conceptual. We left the meeting understanding that this was conceptual and that Munson and Mary Freebed had to approach their respective boards, and that they would return to us with any movement at all. We have not heard anything from them. So it was agreed that if any movement was to be taken, it had to be presented to this board ahead of any progress. So we were intrigued by the concept, but that's all that it was a concept at that point.
Okay.
Thank you.
Can I ask, thank you for bringing that one up. That just makes me wonder, are they actually proposing to buy the pavilions, though? I mean, I didn't read it as such, but,
The
right, like,
pavilions
we're
are not for sale.
Right.
Okay.
So they're looking at what, potentially leasing space within the pavilions?
They were looking at a wide variety of options, including space inside the pavilion, space inside Munson. Should they
Right.
build a hospital? Could they lease property? Could they buy property? They didn't know what exactly they needed. They know that there is a need for that type of service in the Traverse City area, and they
Right.
were intrigued by a partnership with Mary Freebed. They wanted to know, they wanted a meeting with us, just so they could understand, is it possible to sell a piece of property if ever asked?
A portion of the pavilion's
Correct.
property. So this was
And they were looking
Munson
at the piece of
inquiring.
property between Pavilion's existing and Munson Medical Center that is along Elmwood.
Okay.
Thank you.
A motion to receive and file?
And we did have a lot of questions, by the way. There's a lot of looking into that has to be taken, but we aren't going to do that until they return to us with a more formalized plan.
Okay.
I'd move that we receive the Department of Health and Human Services minutes of February 22nd, 2019.
Okay.
Support.
Moved by Klaus, supported by Jewett to receive and file those minutes, item A4. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We're on item A6, Resource Recovery 2018 Annual Solid Waste Report, page 24 in your packet. Go ahead,
No, that was,
Gordy.
Gordy.
yes. Page 26, I just scanned through this, and, but something that just struck me, and I don't know if anybody here has the answer to it, is on page 26, they show a graph of the uptick in recyclables, which is certainly good, but they also show the landfill. And what I found looking at this chart, in 2010, there were 67,000 tons of landfill, and in 2018, it's up to 131,000 tons. The population's grown 6%, but the landfill has doubled. I'm just curious, I don't know if anybody here has an answer, or if we're taking in landfill from
Or are we tracking?
other
better?
areas
Yeah.
is probably the answer, I would hope.
We have had preliminary discussions with Dave Schaefer, our resource recovery manager, and there is a belief that there is a connection of the amount that goes into the landfill and the surcharge for tipping currently. He believes that there's a relationship to that. The lower the fee, the more that goes in the landfill. So he has information that we're trying to get a hold of and understand what that means, and maybe come back to this body and ask for that to change. There is some belief that it may be a little low, and that is encouraging people to throw things away instead of recycle.
My suspicion is coming from, I assume when people bring landfill into Grand Traverse County, it doesn't have to originate in Grand Traverse County?
We don't have a landfill.
Yeah, we don't have a landfill.
This
Okay,
is
so it's
going
not
to-
coming into our,
No, it's going to Wexford, I believe, right?
or is it up
Or
in
Leelanau.
Leelanau?
Or Leelanau, yeah.
The vast majority goes to Leelanau County.
Okay.
Okay, well, it just struck me as significant uptick.
If you wish, Commissioner LaPointe, he has historical data
Okay.
from managers prior to him that will show how and when this rate increased. And he believes it's causal to the decrease in the fee.
Okay.
And it's volatile, too. It's kind of weird. It like jumped up one year and then fell back, and I mean, the landfill rate has been all over the place.
My suspicion is it has something to do with how strictly the reporting is.
I would suspect, having been on the Resource Recovery Council for many, many years, and being involved in the industry for a long time, that it's more about reporting than it is anything else.
Okay.
We've always felt that the amount of tonnage was way underestimated. You know, we can get into the discussion about the surcharge. I object to the surcharge altogether personally, but it is quite, when garbage trucks come to the landfill, they're supposed to notify them at the weigh station where that waste comes from. So even though the landfill is in Leelanau County, they are supposed to notify the weigh station where that trash comes from, and they should only be paying surcharge on that waste that comes from Grand Traverse County. It is a revenue stream for us. You know, we all know that we have become, you know, a throwaway society. You know, so we're going to have more and more. But we also have a lot of things going to the landfill today that didn't used to go to the landfill. You know, all of the construction waste and all that stuff, none of that went to the landfill. And yet they're still taking a lot of it now. You know, Ron can tell you, you know, they have builders waste recycling that I'm sure hauls a lot of stuff away from job sites, you know, and different things. Much of that ends up at the landfill now. It didn't used to. Every contractor in the world either had a burning pile out behind the job site or else had a place that they took it. You know, the regulations have changed, which does not allow that to happen anymore. So more and more of it goes to the landfill. You know, I know a cherry farmer recently that took out a huge cherry orchard, and the brush is all stacked in the field. He had all intentions over the winter to burn it, but the fire department will not allow him to burn it because they said that the trees have spray dope on them, and if they burn it, the chemical will go into the air. So they're not, you know, for hundreds of years, that type of brush and agricultural waste was simply burned in the wintertime. And I really don't know what he's going to do with it this spring, and he doesn't either. You know, he took the orchard out with the idea that he'd be able to farm the land, and now he doesn't have it cleaned up, and trying to think you're going to get a chipper to come in there and chip that up because of the fact that he pushed those trees, stumps and all, that's going to be a disaster trying to chip it. So, you know, I don't know, I don't have the answer, but the fact is the waste stream itself and what has become part of the waste stream has changed so significantly over the last few years that it's going to skew all of our numbers.
Okay. We have a motion to receive and file.
So moved.
Moved by LaPointe.
Support.
Supported by Klaus. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. We are on item, departmental items, 9A, Administration, Conservation Resource Alliance, Boardman Dams Consultant Agreement, item, page 41 in your packet.
Morning, Commissioners. As indicated in my memo to the board in the packet, the county has had a contract with CRA since 2011. In fact, the relationship extends back to 2009 when the implementation team was the holder of the contract. As put in my memo, they do provide a variety of services related to the dams removal project and restoring the Boardman River. And even though the dams are out, the restoration work continues, and so we continue to rely on them in helping us be a point person for the project, as well as grant funding and grant administration. Representatives from CRA are here this morning. They prepared a PowerPoint presentation giving you an update on the overall project and answer any questions you may have about the services they provide for the county.
All right, take it away.
Thank you. I'm Amy Beyer, and I'm the Director for Conservation Resource Alliance. Have a couple of team members here with me this morning. Nate Winkler, sitting in the front here, is one of our biologists with CRA. Kim Balke, sitting with me. The three of us were actually part of the team that sat right here in 2009 when the city and the county and the rest of the implementation team for this project was selecting someone to help them through this project. So today I have two purposes. One is to give you a very brief overview of where the project stands, because it's spring and it's a good time to do that. The other purpose is to get you familiarized with the services that we are providing and intend to provide as this project winds down. So in 2016, we started communicating with both the city and the county about how we would plan to kind of phase our services down as the project winds to an end. So I'm going to flip through about 10 minutes of slides, and then we're here to answer questions after that. The first, and these are in your packet too, of course. So we may need to wait for this to, there we go. Got it, thank you. The first slide that I put in here is just for anyone that is not familiar with CRA. This is a pretty good way to describe us. Here is a picture of our next 3-year work plan, okay? I got asked the other day, oh, is this everything you've done as an organization? And it's not, because we celebrated our 50th anniversary last year. So we've been doing this kind of work for a long, long time. But this is how we plan our work, and it's a good depiction of our service area. So we work on rivers primarily. We do projects mostly of a smaller scale than the Boardman Dam removal project, from the Pure Marquette watershed in the south and the Ludington area all the way up to the bridge. And there's a handful of projects that are identified that we're going to talk about today on the Boardman as well. Just as a quick reminder of how the project progressed in the county's owned scenario, this is a photo from 2012, and of course we're looking upstream to the south. You can see what the Boardman Pond and Dam and the old Cass Road Bridge looked like there, the powerhouse. And this is during removal in July 2017. One reminder, you all are probably well aware, but when we talk about dams, you know, this is the powerhouse area here, but the dam itself on these systems extends all the way across, right? It's a whole earthen berm, sometimes reinforced with concrete like it is in this case, and other times not. So as a part of the Boardman Dam removal, which was actually the second dam removal, the river was actually returned to its original channel. This is what it looked like in October of 2018. Same view, new bridge, powerhouse, and the old bridge have been decommissioned over here. So that's what you're looking at. What happens, as Chris mentioned, the dams are out, but there is ongoing work that always follows these types of projects. You have permits open, things that we're monitoring and actively raising funds to take care of. A site like this one is something that needs attention. Here's what we do when we run into a site that's left after dam removal like this. This is one type of treatment that uses timbers and posts. The timbers are driven down, the root wads are secured to those, and then the posts are cut off at ground level. Here's a bird's eye view of the same type of a treatment. This is as my colleague Kim always says, this kind of a scenario here where you've stabilized a bank opposite an important floodplain, that's a recipe for a stable river. And that's kind of our goal with this type of work, is to return these stretches of river that have been dammed up for 100 years in this case to something more like Mother Nature designed, because it turns out that Mother Nature's designs do a better job of mitigating rain events and taking care of the river and tend to stay in place where we put them. Whenever we muck around with these systems in man-made structures, we set ourselves up to have to chase down stuff like that forever and ever and ever. So let me back up one here. Might have advanced that. Can I do page up, do you know? Backspace, there we go. Okay. There also occasionally, like in this case, when we lower these ponds, we expose creeks and seeps. These are natural features and they need attention. The Boardman revealed 4 major seep or creek areas, and here's what we do to take care of those. Now I'm not sure if it's delaying or... Okay, we'll go back to that. So this is a treatment using rock and log terraces to stabilize that type of a seep situation. That can be a permanent solution that doesn't require additional maintenance. And of course, the revegetation will take care of itself after we stop the active erosion. So these are the types of post-restoration or post-dam removal restoration projects that we want to take care of. The invasive species work is something that we are helping the Conservation District with. We have funding through 2020 to support that activity. It's a little bit more intensive after dam removal when you expose all these soils. In 2018, we addressed 2 different sites at the Nature Education Reserve. These are the types of things that will not heal on their own. They need an active treatment in order to maintain them. There is a cost associated with these. This is what we fundraised for. CRA put $120,000 into this work in 2018. There's another 7 sites on the list, including those seep areas, planned for 2019. So we're tailing down, but there is still work to be done in the next year or 2. So here's what that site looks like after. It's treated again with those rocks and log terraces. When we move on to Sabin, I guess the other thing to mention about these when we look at a site like that is that, you know, we have trail infrastructure up at the top of this, obviously, right? And so when we stabilize the toe of the bank and get this into a permanently stable situation, we've also preserved that trail infrastructure and kind of prevented future costs of having to repair and maintain that trail as well. Sabin is the last dam that was removed, and of course that took place in 2018. So again, a similar look to this, the Sabin Pond, looking upstream or to the south. Here's what it was looking like last fall at the end of the drawdown and the rechannelization. In this case, there had been dredging, a fairly significant amount of lowering of that channel immediately below the dam to help with the power generation. So there was active channel work that you may have seen in this area. This is reconstructing the new channel so that it can be stable in its new location. And here's what it looked like over the winter. We're anxiously awaiting the pretty green shot that will arrive this spring, but the last time I was out there, there was still a fair amount of snow cover on there. Still beautiful. We do intend to wrap up that work in 2019. There will be the contractor that the Army Corps has hired, JSS, Job Site Services, will be on site doing sediment management, doing wood placement. You'll see lots of planting and revegetation activity this spring. So there's also 3 different creeks that you may notice if you get out there for a hike. Those also will need to be addressed, and that's some of the work that we're doing. So the last couple of slides that I threw in here have to do with kind of the project overview and CRA's services. Here is a giant bird's eye view of the costs associated with this and, of course, the funds that have been raised, beginning back in 2005 with feasibility study and planning, Brown Bridge Dam removal in 2012, Boardman Dam, the Cass Road Bridge, now called Robbins Bridge, the Sabin Dam removal, for a total cost of about $27 million. We're working still with the implementation team, which was established to help decommission the dams. I like to remind people that this body of agency volunteers has been working at our disposal, at your disposal, for all of these years, for 10 plus years, and it's really become a model that the nation is interested in. It's brought a whole lot of horsepower to the project. It's brought a lot of good technical input and consideration, and also funding support. The ex officio partners have been there from the get-go as well and helped to guide the project locally. We started in working on this in 2009, as Chris said, when the implementation team, the city and the county recognized that we didn't have local agency horsepower, capacity, or personnel or technical expertise to oversee this work. So the implementation team, sometimes I still tell people, it almost functioned as a standing county and city committee, if you think of it that way. CRA was engaged to provide what might be viewed as deep executive secretary services for this project, a project management role, making sure there's no duplication of efforts among team members, serving as a point of contact between the tribe, who played a very important role, the Army Corps of Engineers, and the local folks. So this is kind of our role in a nutshell. If you noticed our memo in the packet that covers the agreement for services for 2019, you get a little snapshot of what we actually are providing today as the work scopes down. Fund development has been a very significant effort in this project. CRA currently has 8 different grants open. The value of those is about $3.5 million, so we're still active. That amount has definitely tailed off since the big push during the dam removal phase. Of those 8 grants, 6 of them are closing in 2019. That's work that these folks helped me with. 2 more of them are open until 2020 and are helping with things like revegetation and monitoring work, invasive species work, that sort of thing. So it's taken a village for sure. These numbers don't add up to 27 million because there's a whole bunch of other smaller grants that have been put toward the project or things related to the project over time. If you're ever interested in that detail, we are meeting now only once every other month with the implementation team. The next meeting comes up, I think, on April 18th, right here at 1:30. And every quarter, we look through one of the things that CRA has maintained. This thing is running 17 pages now, a line-by-line accounting of the different grant funds that have come into the community for and around this project. And that's something that's been of interest to outside people as well. Sometimes we like to stop and remember, where did all this support come from? It came from a wide variety of sources. You know, on some days as the project manager, project coordinator, I wish that this project could have been done with one grant for a giant, large amount. That would have simplified a lot of things. But sometimes when you get this many different folks from different places involved in looking at your community, it can spin off into other good things and interests, you know, that are going to serve us well in the years to come, including things that are going on at the Fish Pass project at Union Street right now. The city and the county have both contributed to this effort, for sure, in a couple of different ways that are sketched out here. The top figure there represents your inputs. So $185,000 that the city has contributed, $185,000 that the county has committed since 2009 in an annual services contract. You'll notice that the amount proposed for the CRA services this year is starting its step down to $17,500, and it will continue to go down, and it will end sometime in the next couple of years as the needs sort of dry up. But the county and city have also provided some other support that was very important to the project in recent years. So I'm going to end there and open it up to questions. I want to steer you towards the project website and also CRA's website. But most importantly, given that it's spring, you know, if any of you individually would like to come out and have one of our folks walk through the site with you, it's nice and easy. It's a short tour. That way you can get all of your questions answered, and you might feel like you're more informed in terms of answering the questions that can come from the community this spring. We love to do that. Give our office a call at any time to do that. So I'll offer this up to questions, and Kim and Nate are here to help me.
All right, any questions from the board? Commissioner Wheelock.
I guess not necessarily a question, just a comment. I think we all look at this project and we forget about the fact of the massive partnership that has been created to have this happen. The idea that the community is benefited by a $27 million reconstruction project, and Grand Traverse County's contribution is less than $200,000. You know, this partnership is huge, and I certainly acknowledge the city and the Grand Traverse Band for their contributions, along with CRA and many of the members of the implementation committee. I'm not sure any of us really believed we could make it happen in the beginning. You know, and there was a lot of folks that didn't think we should even try, but the fact is, at the end of the day, we have a great project that will benefit this community well into the future, and Grand Traverse County's financial contribution has been very minimal. And that partnership absolutely has to be recognized.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners? Okay, do we have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve and receive, thank you.
Okay, so this is on page 41. Suggested motion is resolved, the Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners approve the Boardman River Dams Implementation Team Consultant Agreement and authorize the board chairperson to authorize the agreement on behalf of the Board of Commissioners. So this is the $17,000, 500
Yes.
Expense.
Yes.
All right, that's your motion, Sonny?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Support.
All right, moved by Wheelock, supported by Jewett. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much. We are on item 9B, Corrections Facility Jail Shower Wall Modification. I see staff is moving towards the podium. And Mr. Sheriff.
Good morning, Tom Bensley, Grand Traverse County Sheriff. The current Grand Traverse County Jail, just a little update, was built in 1964. That's 55 years ago. We're dealing with a portion of that 1964 construction. It was remodeled in 1984, 35 years ago, and it was designed and built as a jail. It serves very well as a jail. It was not designed and built as a self-harm suicide prevention facility. However, upgrades over the past several years have been done to enhance the safety and security. We can't anticipate what inmates will do to cause self-harm. What we can do is make building modifications and changes when we see an issue that has or could be a safety or security problem. This minor remodel will provide more visibility of inmates in the cells that are affected. So we're asking for your approval to move forward with changing the shower and toilet security walls in or privacy walls, privacy walls in 10 of the cells in the original part of the jail, which was constructed and then remodeled, constructed in 64, remodeled in 84. Do you have any questions?
Mr. Wheelock?
Tom, the other cells in the jail do not have this issue, or do we have other areas in those restroom facilities, if you will, that are still not visible? I know that that's been a significant problem over the last number of years with the fact that we could not observe people, and we know there's privacy rules and all of those kind of things, but we've had couple pretty nasty things happen in those showers beyond the ability for officers to see.
Yes.
Are the rest of the jails okay, are the rest of the cells okay, or do we need to address something in those also?
Number one, I'll let Captain Ritter address those other cells, but as far as the safety and security versus privacy, we asked Mr. Tholen to look into that, and the bottom line was that there is a balance there, but it tips a little bit more toward the safety side than the privacy side. I think that was the crux of your memo.
Yes, I had the opportunity to go over to the jail and look at what they're planning to do. And then I spent a significant amount of time just researching case law and statutes and regulations related to privacy within jails. And I really don't have any concerns with what they're planning to do, given the minimal modifications and the good reasons for doing so.
So to address your question, Commissioner, there are still two areas that I will be asking to address. As you all saw on your tour, the ones we're addressing now are the large steel privacy barriers that we have in the 6-man cells. If an inmate wants to, usually if an inmate wants to hurt themselves or conduct some kind of nefarious activities, they go behind those privacy screens because they know we can't see them. This modification is going to reduce the size of that wall, put it directly in front of the shower stall and a stubby wall in front of the commode, giving officers a greater view into that area, make it much more difficult for somebody to hide. There are 2 additional cells with that. When we find an appropriate modification, we'll be making that recommendation on. The one that we've already addressed was the change-out area a couple years ago. We modified that shower area and changed that to upgrade it and bring it a little more up to date. These 10 cells are the primary concern right now. It's where we've had the majority of our problem activity. That's why we're asking for these cells first.
On the drawings that Hallmark provided, and then somebody drew them up, there's actually 11 cells that are being retroed, not 10.
There should only be 10.
Okay, their
Yeah.
drawings, everything refers to 11.
Yeah,
Eight of one type, 2 of one, and 1 of another, so.
There are only 10 that actually meet that specification to
Okay.
have that barrier we're removing.
Right.
Mr. Hundley?
So this was certainly identified to us as an issue, and so I appreciate, the work that you guys have done on it. Really, my only question is about the fact that there was only one respondent to the request, and just as the folks that sit behind and making sure that it's the money is being wisely spent and all of that. So if you can just talk to us about Hallmark and that process.
I can speak to you about Hallmark. I'd have to refer to Mr. Berry about the process. I know it did go out for bid.
Sure.
Hallmark has been in the jail several times over the past 10, 12 years now doing modifications. The jail is kind of a difficult environment for contractors to come in and conduct work. So some of them, I think, are shy about going through that vetting process. Some of them are kind of shy about the difficulty it is to get in and out and conduct that work. Hallmark, having done it several times, are kind of familiar with our processes, and they're not shy about going through those processes. So I think that may have contributed to that they're familiar with it. But I can't really speak to why somebody else hasn't bid it. It did go out for bids.
And to the other folks on the board who have more construction experience than I mean, as far as the cost that we're looking at, it seems in line with things. Okay.
I think it's reasonable.
Okay.
I mean, for the scope of the work, yeah, it's more than reasonable in my eyes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, I can speak to the complicated part of the vetting and the getting in and out of doing work in the jail. I've had opportunity to do it a few times. The idea of you have to inventory every screw, every wrench, everything you have, every time you go in, every time you come out. The guys have to empty their pockets out to make sure they don't have a pocket knife in their pocket or any of those kind of things. It becomes very complicated and time intensive of non-productive time that the contractor also spends, just simply the security requirements getting in and getting out.
Sure.
I think this is a good proposal. I think the numbers are very good, considering the scope of what we're asking them to do.
Okay.
Okay, Commissioner Klaus?
I would just suggest talking to Hallmark, because they do have 11 units that they're.
Yeah, I'll get with Mr.
voting.
Berry on that. We'll take a look at it.
So they may reduce their number a bit.
Yep.
All right. No further questions? Do we have a
Mr.
motion?
Chairman, I would move that the Board of Commissioners authorize the board chair and county administrator to effectuate the necessary documents to implement the contract with Hallmark Construction in the amount of $15,875 as defined in the scope of work.
Okay, moved by Wheelock,
Support?
supported by Jewett. Any further discussion? Commissioner Klaus?
With the modification that you'll be talking to Hallmark regarding the
Yeah,
11 units that they have listed, and you're only.
Yeah, I'll have to
10.
look. My quote has 10, so, and it had the same price, so I'll have to see what you're looking at. Obviously, if that price was based on 11, that would go down.
the
You're allowed to pay
paperwork
them
says
less.
10, but the drawings show 11.
Okay.
Right.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Todd.
We are on to, let's see, no unfinished business. We're on item 11. Cherry Capital Airport discussion, page 71 in your packet. Nate, you want to give us a background of the situation?
I can do that.
Thank you.
To the right screen here. So, as you know, there have been a significant amount of trees cut in and around the airport property, 3 Mile South Airport. Last year, there were also trees cut in the western approach to the airport as well. That drew quite a bit of attention to the easements, why the trees were cut, how the trees were cut, what type of payments were made because the trees were cut and the easements available. So the tree cutting around the airport is not new, but the most recent cutting has drawn some additional attention. So just wanted to give you a background as far as what the county involvement is. And we have a current lease agreement with Cherry Capital Airport. It used to be the NRAC. That dates back to 1989, and that is a lease that goes until 2025. So the current airport commission met in November and reviewed information that was presented to them by the FAA as a result of a study or an assessment in 2014 about wildlife habitat and obstacle avoidance. Specific to obstacle avoidance, the FAA pointed out 58 points or obstacles to Cherry Capital Airport that need to be mitigated. And they also identified areas of wildlife habitat and concern in and surrounding the airport. Now, when you think about wildlife, most people are thinking about deer or things on the ground, but wildlife also includes birds and birds that nest in and around the trees around the airport. So we have a lease that basically tells the Cherry Capital Airport and Airport Commission that they have the responsibility to operate the airport in compliance with all state, federal regulations, including those of the FAA. So the FAA told Cherry Capital Airport and the Airport Commission that they have to mitigate these issues. So the airport, over the last few years, since 2014, has been doing things at the airport to attempt to mitigate the dangers involving wildlife and the trees. Every year they've been cutting trees since 2014 and before 2014. They've also been taking measures to manage wildlife, lethal and non-lethal measures. Non-lethal measures included Piper. If you're familiar with Piper, he was a very effective approach to managing some of the deer and birds, but it was not completely effective. You know that Piper passed away. They also use bird bangs, shot that scares the fowl and birds from the airport. They also use fencing to keep the deer off of the airport property, but again, deer tunnel, according to the airport staff, tunnel underneath the fence and somehow inevitably gain access to the airport. So they've also used lethal measures with both birds and deer to keep them off the airport runways. So this most recent cutting was in compliance with a plan that they were given by the FAA, and they have concluded a significant amount of cutting in and around the airport. So one of the questions that was posed to us was, did the Airport Commission have a choice in this matter? And the answer, quite frankly, is yes. The Airport Commission did have a choice in this matter. They could ignore the FAA's decision or conclusion to remove the trees and the obstacles. If they were found in violation, however, they would lose federal funding up to $2 million for the airport itself. If they did not comply after the first violation, both Grand Traverse County and Leelanau County would be subject to the loss of all federal revenue across all departments. And if the third violation occurred and they were not in compliance, they would lose their operating certificate. So while some could say there was a choice to be made, the Airport Commission did not think that that was a really responsible choice, and they felt it necessary to comply with what the FAA was requesting them to do. Yesterday, we met with some of the commissioners, Commissioner Henschel, Commissioner Coffia by phone, and Commissioner LaPointe with a representative from the Airport Commission and airport staff. And we listened to their presentation for about an hour-ish. And what they told us is just what I've relayed to you, and that the FAA believes that these obstacles must be removed and that the wildlife habitat must be managed in accordance with the Aeronautics Code and FAA regulations, and the Airport Commission is doing that. Mr. DeYoung spoke quite a bit. He's our chairman of the Airport Commission. Takes this very seriously. The Airport Commission takes safety very seriously, and he, of course, did not want to see trees cut to this degree either, but understands the necessity for the traveling public and public at large. During the presentation yesterday, they did share with us that a large plane had been struck by a bird several years ago, and showed us pictures of what had happened with the plane, and it was impacting. The photo was impacting. The bird had gone through the nose cone, ended up in the cockpit, striking the pilots. The instrumentation for the plane went dead, and the plane was totaled. It was a $30 million plane from a bird strike. So it is a real thing. It must be managed, and public safety surrounding the airport and on the airport property is imperative. Mr. Klein likened this discussion to a speed limit of 55 miles an hour. You can have a violation of that speed. You may speed your entire life and never have a speeding ticket because of that speeding. But if you get the first ticket, then that's your first violation. The second violation and so on will increase. But the underlying need for the speed limit is safety. So these plans, the FAA rules, the FAA suggestions are all based on safety for the public. What our relationship is, we have a very long lease. There's 363 pages associated with the lease document between the Grand Traverse County, Leelanau County, and the airport that we will have to review thoroughly, but it is our opinion or position that we had given the Airport Commission the responsibility to run the airport in compliance with all rules and regulations and statutes, and that they have done that.
Okay, we're going to open this up to public comment before we go to commissioner discussion. Gordy, did you want to?
Well, just add on, I attended that meeting, and just
Oh.
a couple points, just so it's
Okay.
all, first of all, I was very impressed with their organization and the thought they put into this. A couple of questions I had going into it was, and we talked about, were there some alternatives that they considered before the cutting of the trees? And they had gone in, as Nate had mentioned, and spent quite a bit of time, quite a bit of money over the years trying to avoid the cutting that they did by putting in pesticides, insecticides to kill the insects that draw the birds, et cetera, and their conclusion was, and the FFA was, it wasn't adequate enough. So they went through several years trying to get around this issue. The second point was the concern I had, and I had mentioned when this kind of all broke, was that I thought they should have been more proactive. You know, I saw it like most people, first driving down South Airport and saw the cutting going on, and there didn't seem to be any advanced a notice of that, just to make the public aware and give them some of the facts. Not that it was going to turn it around. But they said that they, in fact, had met, they had invited their local paper out to their facility, gave them a full briefing months before the cutting took place, in hopes that that would be put in the paper so people would understand before it happened, but for whatever reason it was not published. Secondly, they had engaged the city in great detail. They went through the people they met with and the information they had given them, because a lot of people were concerned that the zoning of the city would impact that, and they clearly went through how federal law and state law trumps local law in that regard. And the city was, in fact, fully aware of what their plan was, as was the county back in a previous board was made aware of it. So like I say, the one concern or one fault I had going into the meeting was that they weren't proactive in notifying the public, but they certainly demonstrated in that regard what they did. And I guess the other point was, Nate touched on, and they covered, you know, we think of the airport, that's where they have to cut the trees. These are the obstacles that the FAA is concerned with. But they showed a map, and so I think you said there's 58 sightings around, way beyond the airport, that are concerning to the FAA in terms of being obstacles in the glide path or whatever. So it goes way beyond just the runway. It goes to an area, including the cemetery. The trees over there have issues. So it's a much larger project than just the cutting of trees on what we see as the immediate airport area. So it
Okay.
was,
Commissioner Cuffia, you were also at that meeting. Did you want to make a comment before we take public
I
comment?
was going to wait
Okay.
for your public comment first.
All
Thank
right.
you.
I will as well. So anybody wishing to speak on this topic, now is your chance. Come up to the podium, give your name and where you're from. And again, this is public comment on this topic only, which is the tree cutting, or, well, I guess the airport, Cherry Capital Airport.
My name is Gretchen Iorio. I live at 520 North Elmwood. First, I'd like to thank Commissioner Heinchel for his email response yesterday to my concerns regarding the clear cutting near the airport. It, however, didn't answer some of the important questions. The public and perhaps the Commission has not been presented with an analysis and documentation which should provide a basis and justification for the clear cutting for aeronautical and non-aeronautical uses. Some of the clear cutting was done in this instance for an anticipated commercial purpose. The way the clear cutting was handled raises concerns and questions regarding the establishment of a new airport authority, which may have stronger control over our airport and its properties that could block public participation in its decision-making process. A request has been made to the Airport Authority for analysis and documentation supporting the clear cutting. To date, there has been no response. It's easy to understand why the public feels like they're in the dark. It's especially true since a portion of the clear cutting was done for commercial purposes unrelated to aeronautical use. Further, it was reported in the Record Eagle that trees in the Oakwood Cemetery will be removed. I'm certain the public has questions for the airport director about that. Protection of the green canopy in our county is important for many reasons. The public needs to understand and participate in solutions if it is determined that wildlife is a problem at our airport. Simply stated, there are a number of issues regarding clear cutting that need to be resolved. The County Commission should direct Kevin Klein, the airport director, to make himself available to the public at the next commission meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment?
Hello again, it's Dave Petrov, Interlochen. There's a lot of issues going around this airport thing right now that I'd like to address, but I guess we only have a little bit of time. I used to live, when I lived downstate for a long time, a mile away from the Ford Motor Proving Grounds. And this is considerably bigger than this airport. It was 6 square miles, 2 miles by 3 miles long. And they have to watch for wildlife out there. Deer are a big problem. It's out in the middle of nowhere near Romeo. And they put up 8-foot fences around there. Now they've got test tracks. They got cars going over 100 miles an hour down there all the time. They don't want deer coming out there. The 8-foot fence is what you put up. That stops deer. That's the #1 problem. The bit about forests do have nesting habitat for birds, but they're typically small birds or the birds of prey, like an eagle or a hawk or something like that. You have one. It may occasionally interfere with a plane, but it's very, very, very seldom. When you take down those trees, you're going to put in either paved surface or you're going to put in open fields, and that is ideal habitat and attraction for flocking birds. Geese, okay, other birds like that, and seagulls, okay. Do you think it's going to be more beneficial to a risk to a plane to have flocks of birds or a single bird? Now, the whole aspect of this development here, and maybe one of the hints comes to it, the company that was selected to cut down these trees is called Roman Empire Tree Service. That has a lot to do with my perceptive of one of the other underlying reasons why we're doing a lot of what we're doing, expanding runways and putting in more territory. The Coast Guard is part of this airport area and things like that. And this, it looks to me more like this is development that's a precursor to bringing in more military operations in this area. I don't want to be put on a target for a nuclear strike because we have a nuclear or a SAC facility or something like that here, Strategic Air Command. So this is what we're leaning into, and we should be avoiding that. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave.
Ann Rogers again. A few questions. I don't know if this was put out for bids. If it wasn't, it should have been. I'd like to know how many were received, and was it published in the newspaper under public notices? And I guess I'm also very concerned about the ultimate goals here. This is, you talk about it impacting county property. It's going to impact property values, and if I lived near the airport, I'd be asking for a reduction in taxes. The city has had a goal of 100% renewables, and this really puts a dent in all of that. I would suggest that this be covered with solar panels and a prairie for pollinators, because those are in decline also. And the solar panels would at least mitigate the emissions that the trees are no longer there to do. So consider that. The airport authority has talked about it a long time, but they don't take any action. So I would suggest solar panels are the future there, not selling it for another commercial development.
Okay, thank you, Ann. Good morning.
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is TJ Andrews. I live at 619 Webster Street in Traverse City. I do have a few additional questions at this point regarding the land clearing on county property. One question is what additional tree land clearing is planned? I understand Mr. Alger said that it has concluded, but I'm not sure that the forest has, there's still a lot of forest left, so that raises the question that there's a potential for more harvesting and where that is. There's a question related to the process. I appreciate that the airport staff went to some effort to meet with the local paper reporters. Similar effort might have been presented to the public at a body like this. I would encourage you, as the main body overseeing the airport, to encourage them to ensure that those presentations, rather than hoping a reporter picks up the story, are presented directly to you so there's public notice and public opportunity to explore the issue. I echo Commissioner Hundley's concern. The packets aren't published. The memos supporting the decisions aren't published. The minutes are frankly obscure to the point of misleading the public, even if you can find them buried somewhere in the county commission consent calendar months later. I reviewed the FAA database for wildlife strikes at the airport. In 2018, there were a total of 13 strikes. 8 of them were from killdeer, sandpipers, and gulls, none of which live in forests. The others were 5 small birds, blackbird, red-winged blackbird, and others. So we do look forward to seeing that FAA order threatening withdrawal of county funding if the forest is not removed. I know that the FAA encourages skirting of fences and other issues to mitigate deer. There's no evidence, at least on the FAA website, that that's a threat, has ever been a threat at this airport. So we also understand that when the airport is, if it's exempt from zoning, they are subject to federal law. So we should see the paperwork showing that they complied with NEPA, which they did for the tree cutting in Traverse Heights last year. So I would anticipate that this tree cutting went through a similar process, and we'll look forward to seeing that assessment. In addition, there's a bigger question in terms of the development of this site. There's a decaying airport within a stone's throw of this site. That's been a community looking for ways to develop that.
Thank you. Your time is up.
For 1 minute? May I proceed?
1 minute.
Acme has lost its Kmart. Interlaken's losing its grocery store. We've got big boxes across this community. There's a public policy question about whether the county should be getting into the business of commercial development when this is an ongoing concern. We have empty big boxes. So I would encourage a public process with planning and with engagement from those townships that are looking to fill those sites before we develop more. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Cat Murder with the Sheriff's Office. I just wanted to address real quick the 10 versus 11. I just went and looked at that real quick. There was an 8-man cell that has a smaller steel privacy screen that we did incorporate in that project. That screen is being removed, and the stubby wall is going in front of that commode as well. But it's different than the larger screens that we're removing from the other cells. So there's your clarification. Thank you.
All right, anyone else for the public comment on the airport issues? All right, seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. I'm just going to, a couple clarifications, just so we're clear that Grand Traverse County does not own the airport outright. It is a joint ownership with Leelanau County. So together, we formed the Airport Commission and charged them with the running of the airport in compliance with the FAA regulations. So for if we were to go above their heads, so to speak, it would require both counties come together with a resolution that would, I guess, overarch their authority. The other thing I would like to state publicly, the airport phone number. And a lot of people get confused because airlines are completely separate from the airport. They are tenants of the airport. They use the airport facilities. So it's really hard to differentiate if you've never really looked into it. But the airport administration can be contacted at this phone number. And I'd ask you to put it in the minutes, 231-947-2250. And I'd also ask staff to make sure that is available on our website. So once again, 947-2250 with your specific questions about the regulations. And with that, I'll bring it back to the board for discussion.
Can I propose a friendly amendment? If that was, I don't know if that was a motion or just a request.
That was not.
We're asking to put it on the website.
It was just
right?
a request, a suggestion of a commissioner.
Okay.
If you'd like to make that binding, we can make it a motion.
Well, because that's kind of what I'm thinking, especially because I don't want to overstep and tell the Airport Commission what to do exactly. However, I do, as I said at the beginning, I feel like it was a struggle for me to even narrow down where are the phone numbers, who are the members, where are the agendas, where are the minutes. So at the very least, I guess I'd like to make a motion that we add the airport phone number and also list the members with their contact information and list the director's contact information on our webpage on grandtraverse.org under this, under the Airport Commission page.
Okay, I'll
so
support
that there's
that.
a place, yeah, thank you. So,
So we have a motion by Kafia, supported by Henschel, to add the airport's contact information to our webpage.
All members
including
listed.
all commissioners
And their
of
contact.
the Northwest Regional Airport Commission.
And the director.
NRAC.
And the director.
All right, discussion, Commissioner Wheelock.
I guess the only question was, do we list committee members on other county committees?
Some yes, some no.
The tattle boards and all of those are all listed, the individual members?
That's a fair question.
I'm not sure that we do with the others. So, I have no problem with the idea of listing the airport, the director's contact information, but I question the logic behind listing the individual board members when I know there are other county boards that we do not list their memberships.
And that's fair.
building authorities
Yep.
and a number of others, Commission on Aging. We don't list the individual board members.
Right.
You know, so I guess my suggestion or my request would be that we list the airport's contact information, possibly the director's contact information, but the individual board members, I believe that reference should not necessarily be published on the county's website,
And
unless we're going to publish
do that for
all
everybody.
boards and representatives.
And I would be supportive of that, frankly, but to your point, I think it's a fair question, and the only reason I felt like it might make sense for us to go to that length is because unlike Area Agency on Aging and DHHS and some of the other boards that we work with, TADL, there's not a place on the actual body's website where these things are listed. Area Agency, TADL, and the others, they have a governance section where you can find who the members are, and that is not the case for the Airport Commission. So it's like Russian dolls. You're like pulling off, okay, I'm digging through the county's minutes and what have you. I can see your point, but I also feel like it's not listed anyplace else, so how can we?
Well, I guess maybe that would be, you know, again, this debate thing or discussion thing, but.
This is the time.
The fact is that possibly we can ask the Airport Commission to put those on their website, but I don't believe it's appropriate on the county's website.
We can ask, right?
You know,
We have control over
You're
hourly.
saying that Commission
Right.
on Aging
Yep,
and CC.
they do, yeah.
The Community Collaborative and all of those list their memberships on their contact information. They're not listed on the county's website.
We could amend the motion to request that the Airport Commission lists those on their website. But they should change their tab, because right now, the only place I found it was under the tab called News, which was very counterintuitive to me. I thought something like governance or board or leadership or staff or something. So it's very hard to find, and there's no list on their website currently. So I'd be okay to amend it and make that request of them, to Sunny's concern.
So you want to change the motion from putting it on our website to simply requesting them to put it on their website?
I think the motion gets amended to say, we add the airport director's contact information and request that they list all of their members and their contact information on their website. I'm just trying to make it a smooth process for people who want to attend meetings and want to know who to call. They know how to find us. We have a website, it's all listed, phone numbers.
Email address.
Okay. Is there any objection to a friendly amendment?
No.
Is that?
No, I think that's fine. I think the idea of, this is the airport's contact information, this is the director's contact information, that is appropriate on the Grand Traverse County website.
Okay.
But
And
as
we
far
asked
as
them.
listing the individual members of the Airport Commission, I believe that's the responsibility of the airport to list that information available.
So we'll ask them to do that.
Okay, so we have an amended, a motion, a friendly amendment to, do you have it, Bonnie?
I think so.
Okay. Further discussion by commissioners who have not spoken yet.
Well, can I
On-
clarify
on
what that
this
motion
particular-
says? You're asking to put the airport number on the website, including the director's contact info, and ask them to put their commissioners of the NRAC on their website. Is that correct?
Including their contact information.
Including contact.
Name,
Okay.
contact information.
On the airport's website.
On the
Correct,
airport.
not ours. Yep.
And understanding that is simply a request, not an order,
Correct, yeah.
because
Exactly.
it is
We
a
don't
joint,
control their website.
jointly owned airport, and we don't have sole control.
Right.
Okay, any further discussion by commissioners?
On that
Not
particular
on this
piece.
motion, but on general discussion, so I can wait. if-
Okay. Hundley, you good?
No, yeah, same.
Okay. All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, any further discussion on this topic? Commissioner Hundley?
Hey. Okay, so I had a couple of good conversations with Doug DeYoung during the course of the week, and to some of the public comment, there was a question about had there been other bids. Actually, in the November minutes, which were the first ones I think that we saw, there were multiple bids for the tree cutting and the tree cutting. There were 3 of them, I believe, and they were, you know, on the order of $300,000, which, as I recall, was the reason that I had pulled it from the consent agenda, because that seemed like a large number. They were talking about tree cutting, and I had made a point to some of the people that I had knocked doors with along Boone Street that it was something that I would keep an eye on and try and make sure we did better in the future. So there was bidding, Also, Mr. DeYoung mentioned specifically with the the large tract that was clear-cut just now, that it is part of their plan. They have a number of plans, but they are at least exploring putting solar panels on the entire tract. And he also did mention specifically the notion of, I don't know, leasing it out, but to like beekeepers for a pollinating, area, because those two uses, I gather, go well together. So it's there, at least something that they're talking about, whether or not it happens or is real, or if there's a for lease sign that goes up, 2 weeks later. I can't confirm. Anyway, but so that was what I was hearing. I also did at least get the 2014 FAA obstacle issue was, I haven't seen it, but I understand it's the case, and I'm certainly not suggesting that, this board obstruct anything to comply with FAA regulations, and I doubt anybody here would. But he, at least, I understood him to acknowledge that 2014 FAA assessment was instigated, at least in part, because of our 2013 decision to extend the runway. And so I was able to find a stakeholders meeting PowerPoint presentation online about that extension of the runway, and they have some very detailed, diagrams and actual like Google, camera photos of this is the runway, and here's where we're talking. This is the area we're going to extend. But notably absent from that presentation and anything else I could find was any indication that, okay, this is where we're going to extend, and we've got an orange line around it, but these trees right over here are going to be impacted. There was no indication of that. So I'm not saying that they've done wrong, that it shouldn't. I'm certainly not saying we need to put the trees back up, like stand those logs back up. I understand what's done is done. I don't like being on the receiving end of surprises that I'm scared of running into a situation where bodies that we in some way are responsible for take the tact of begging forgiveness instead of asking permission. And I would like this process going forward to just, if this was all caused by our decision as a community to extend our runway, that's fine. I mean, if we decided as a community with a process to extend that runway for reasons, then we got something out of it. And if this is the end result of it, I think everybody can be satisfied to at least some extent that we understood what we were trading. As long as that's a clear process along the way. And so which gets back to my desire, and I expressed it to Mr. DeYoung, and he acknowledged that going forward, they had tried, they talked to the Record Eagle, and they had tried to get the word out, but it is different from being here before us to say, hey, this is what we're getting ready to do, even if it's a friendly acknowledgement, because there's precious little we have to say about it, but to forewarn us instead of to tell us after the fact. I would really appreciate that. As a result, for the time being, I anticipate I will probably pull the airport minutes from the consent calendar most of the time for the foreseeable future, just so that we can at least talk through it until we feel like, because he also acknowledged that that's the end of the tree cutting for now. That's the good news. But they have other plans for the next 5 years of things that need to happen. And I said, well, that's great. That's exactly the kind of thing that we'd like to, at least be in the loop on, not just, having an offline meeting with us, but in a public setting where everybody can get advanced warning of it. So the other thought was, I think recently we've been talking about having videotaping of another commission.
Pavilions.
The pavilions, yeah. And maybe that's the case here too. Maybe it would make sense to make these public meetings, you know, if they're public meetings, there's never any public comment, and things happen, and by the time they're here, deeds are already done, you know, so maybe that would be worth exploring as well. Thank you.
Commissioner LaPointe.
Just reiterate and someone answer your question. In my mind, they clearly did everything other than put up billboards, et cetera, in notifying the public of what was going to happen. Like I say, they had full meetings, showed all the charts to the city, and the city took no action. They were the ones that were concerned. They also, in the board meetings, I understand it, the previous county board, we had a member on that, was well informed of what was going on, and the thought was that member would come back to the board, of course, we're in transition, and make them aware.
Right.
And he reiterated how that was the plan, and then, because this was a done deal before we took office.
Right.
So that was, you know, I could not find fault with anything they said when I was challenging that, because that was my big concern, as I said going in, and I sent some emails out to Nate saying the concern I had is they were not proactive.
Right.
But they put that information out there to the parties that should be concerned. They said they wish they could have done a better job, but you know, it's so it certainly was nothing that they were trying to hide. So if anybody's thinking along those lines. And the other thing that was mentioned, a couple of comments were made that this was done in anticipation of clearing that land to make it so they can do more commercial development, which very well may happen. But they assured us that they are not in current conversations with anybody looking at procuring that land. So it was not done to accommodate a future tenant. They said if there was somebody that was interested in it, they'd rather just let them have it as that and let them spend the $300,000 clearing the land. And they also talked about, as Rob had mentioned, not only on that property, but there's several other properties that they control for solar panels and other things. So they were, they did, in my opinion, they did not take the clearing of those trees lightly. And, you know, they discussed, well, this question was, could they been trimmed? And you don't take a 80-foot tree and lop off 30 feet of it and expect it to survive. So the only solution is to take them out, which is a clear cutting. So I can't, after sitting there for probably an hour and a half, and Betsy was in it for most of it, I really can't find fault with, you know, the way in which they proceeded in this matter.
Any other commissioners?
Well, I would, I mean, I totally take your point, and I do hear that they took a variety of actions, and so I had indicated to Mr. DeYoung that, you know, not beating them up about keeping it quiet, but whatever, you know, the efforts that were made, there still seems to have been a gap, and, you know, they may take a page from the Road Commission, because the Road Commission had this east-west corridor thing a month or so ago, and they had hundreds of people there. They got engagement. So there are people within our community that are adept at getting the community involved, and maybe they need to, you know, look at talking with some of those people about how to do it better. Just, that's all.
Okay. Any commissioners who have not yet spoken? Okay. Commissioner Jewett.
I just want to add to what Commissioner LaPointe and Commissioner Huntley had said there. November 20, 2018, it's in the NRAC meeting minutes. It's on page 74 of our pack if anybody wants to see, but there are 3 proposals in there, 3 bids, I guess, and this is when it was moved and supported, passed, and everything. The motion passed to award this to Roman Empire Tree Service or anything. So the information's out there, you know, whether people got it or not, it is there, but it is on page 74 if anybody wants to look at it, so.
Okay. Sonny.
I guess my only comment is, I don't care how much public input you take, the fact is the FAA ordered that these trees be taken down. You know, so, you know, we can talk about and we can hold all the public hearings that we want. You know, we've sat in this chambers many times over the years and had a whole fistful of people here that are opposed to a decision one way or the other. But the fact is, the FAA required these trees come down. I personally had a lot less trouble in my mind getting my head wrapped around the idea that these trees were cut than I did a couple years ago when we cut the trees over along Linden Drive a mile and a half away, or a mile away. You know, those I had a lot harder time in my head getting wrapped around. You know, now, one of the questions, you know, in my mind when I drove through there is, okay, you know, and I'm trying to get this thing together in my head. All right, now, we have the primary runway that runs east and west. Okay, that runway was the runway that was extended. We have to remember that we cannot go toward 3 Mile Road with that runway. Holiday Hills is simply too damn high. The FAA will not allow us to extend that runway that way anywhere. So we extend toward Garfield. Okay, when we extended toward Garfield, we had to go across Garfield, across that big open field, and take down trees on the other side that were in the glide path. So my question becomes, is this cutting because of the fact we do have a small north-south runway? I don't know that. Or is it strictly a wildlife habitat issue? You know, either way around it, the fact is we can take hours and hours of public comment, but we still have to be compliant with the FAA requirements, which required that those trees come down.
Thank you.
Thank you. So I asked for this agenda item to be added, I think it was March 22nd. And my hope had been at that time, and I do understand spring break was last week, so lots of folks were out of town, and that created some of the challenge. But my hope had been that the airport commissioner members, and certainly the director of the airport, could come in and explain this themselves to us as to what will happen on taxpayer-owned property. Coming at it from we are supposed to be stewards of county resources, right? Our budget, our properties. And I wasn't feeling like there was a clear understanding necessarily what was happening on taxpayer-owned property. So I wanted to ask them to come in. I understand they weren't able to be at this meeting, but we had a meeting late yesterday afternoon. I was able to call in for part of it. I still have some questions, and some of them are this. About tree cutting, clear cutting. What else is in the works? There's a 5-year plan. There are obstacles. There was a mention of a water tower that is considered to be an obstacle. What are the plans there? I feel like those are things that at a public meeting would be really appropriate for them to lay out for us. Where else is the FAA telling the airport that there are hazards that need to be eliminated, and what does elimination look like? Is trimming, or is trimming clear cutting? That was a discussion yesterday. When will these things happen? How does it work? And I want to come to an understanding, admittedly, new board member, we have 5 of a 7-member board who are new. How does it work when an entity that is leasing from the county, 2 counties, Leelanau County and us, how does it work when an entity that is leasing property from us with a lease up in 2025 is then subleasing in a way to subsidize and raise revenue for their operations? How does that work? Does any of that funding come directly to the county? Does it just go to the airport, right? If they're leasing for non-aeronautical reasons, they're leasing for big box stores, they're doing these various things, what happens with that revenue stream? Should some of it come to us? What does our current lease say, and should we take another look at that going into 2025? So these are sort of the things that started to cross my mind, particularly as we are now being asked to consider ceding more authority to an authority, right, to create an airport authority. So what is our latitude even currently with our relationship with the Airport Commission? So those are some of the questions I still, and I'm hoping that we can get the airport director. I asked him that yesterday. I think he's busy at our next regular meeting, but study session, special meeting, I think this is worth us digging into more so that we can come to a better understanding, because this is taxpayer-owned property, and what happens on that property we need to be mindful of.
Mr. Chairman, can I just address 2 things?
Bef-
First,
Chris, can I finish my comments?
I'm
before you-
sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you. Go right ahead.
Thank you. Yeah, hold that thought. All right, so to Mr. LaPointe's point, about letting people know. I noted, and I jotted this down at the end of the meeting, I appreciated that the commission chair, Doug DeYoung, said that his one regret was he felt like they should have come to our board, especially recognizing we had 5 new members coming on, and that would have been a really good idea. They did not. They handed Mr. Alger some paperwork, I believe, was the extent of the notification to the county. And I understand they went to the city, but we own the property. We're the landlords. So I feel like it would have been appropriate for them to make a point to come in and do a public presentation. I read the minutes. It said something about obstacle removal. It certainly didn't say anything about clear cutting. And you can say something's going to happen, but it doesn't really describe necessarily what to expect. So I appreciated that Mr. DeYoung felt that that was something they could have done better, and I agree with him. And my hope would be that going forward, we're able to get them in here to walk us through what to expect in the next 5 years. What should the public expect? Where are there swaths of trees and growth that we can expect are going to be cut, right? So, and I've already said my piece about just making it more obvious. Where are the meetings? Who are the members? How do they get a hold of the airport commission? Where do we send them? So those are a couple of my thoughts after I've been rolling this one over for a couple of weeks and after I participated in yesterday's conference call, which statements have been made as fact that the FAA ordered this. I haven't seen the order yet, and I feel like that should be a pretty easy thing to produce. So I'm hoping that I can work with Mr. Alger. You got that stack of paperwork yesterday at about 4 or 5, that we can find that order, and that should be an easy thing to make clear to the public, so that yes, we had no choice. This had to be done. The commercial lease sign going up the day after the clear cutting, I can see why people are skeptical, and I feel like missteps have been made, so it didn't feel as transparent. So I would like us to learn from that and rectify it going forward. One point to Mr. Hundley's statement about the possibility of a solar panel array. And Rob and Gordy, correct me if I got this wrong, but I specifically asked about that in the call. I said, are we saying that's going to go on that property? And it was more that there's a discussion ongoing and maybe a consultant who's been hired to think about if there are places on airport property, particularly places that can't be used for anything else but perhaps a solar array. So it's in the realm of discussion, but I didn't get the sense, and please, my colleagues, correct me if I got it wrong, that they were saying this property is being dedicated to solar panel
Some of it
array. Some
was
of it
the answer
could.
I heard. Some
Right.
of it.
Okay, some of the airport property or some of
Some
this
of what has just
particular
been cleared.
parcel. Okay. So just those were some things. The main thing I feel like is this board, we own this property. We have a relationship with the airport commission. I would like for us to understand that relationship a lot better and understand where we do and do not have latitude and any say at all about what happens on taxpayer-owned property. And so I will, longer term, I think, be figuring that out maybe in May or June with a study session on just what is our relationship with the airport commission? Because we're being asked to transition to something even more substantive with the authority. And I would like the county to drive that. I think that the airport commission would like to move to an authority, and they're going to be driving that ad hoc committee that Mr. Henschel, LaPointe, and Alger on, but I would like us internally as a county to have a better understanding of what that relationship is currently. So I think I've said all the things I wanted to say. Mr. Forsyth, you had some input on one of my earlier statements.
So as Nate indicated earlier, we have 363-page PDF, which gives all the documents related to the airport. Towards the end of that document, towards the end of the 363 pages, starting on page 299, is, and I'll just pull it up and read you the title. It says agreement amending and replacing lease of May 1st, 1972. That says that the term of this agreement is 50 years, so from 1990 to 2040. The interesting thing about this agreement is it wasn't, at least the copy we have, was not executed by the county. So we need to make sure that was fully executed, and we need to know what exactly is the term of the lease. But according to this, is 50 years. There are other terms in that lease, one of which is assignment and subletting. So we would need to review that as well. I will tell you that when the Costco development was proposed and constructed, the Airport Commission did come to this board as well as Leelanau County and ask for approval. So we would be more than happy to look at the minutes from that because that could provide guidance as well.
For the commercial leasing, but not for necessarily clear cutting and obstacle removal, right?
Right.
So those are gonna be two separate pieces. And so let me just clarify, thank you for that, Mr. Forsyth. You said it's through 2040. Is that different than, you had said 2025, Nate?
There is an amendment
Okay.
to the original agreement that what Mr. Forsyth just says. I'm not completely sure if it's 2025 or 2040, so.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
May I address one other concern specific to the ad hoc that we created last month? The purpose is not to understand the agreement as it exists, but the driving factor of, are we going to go with an authority or stay as, we are going to understand this agreement a lot better. I think it's going to be well worth our time to dig into the content of this agreement, so it's a perfect timing issue for us to completely understand the agreement before we move on to any other conversation with the Airport Commission about an authority or keeping the relationship as it is existing. So I'm looking forward to that discussion as well. If you would like, I would like to give you a couple answers to some of the questions that we were posed.
Before you do that, may I ask one thing?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so to that point, I'm going to be very interested in understanding this myself going forward. I do represent the city, which is partially airport property. I would ask, do I need to just attend those ad hocs, or would the chairman reconsider giving me an appointment to that ad hoc committee so that I can be there
You're
and
welcome
learning
to
as we
attend.
go? All right, when's the next meeting?
We haven't scheduled yet. We're
Okay.
waiting for more direction from the airport. They're meeting this month. They'll probably appoint their advisory committee, and then we'll set a schedule at that time.
Okay, so then just staff, can you let me know when it's gonna, well, let's make
Yep.
sure that it's made known when those are gonna be, so any of us who are interested can attend. Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Alger.
I think Mr. LaPointe has.
Actually, Sonny's
sorry.
first.
I guess the comment that I would have, that whole 2025, 2040 is kind of a new question to me as to when that lease agreement actually terminates. But I do recall, and I don't remember exactly the details, but when the Costco lease was entered into, it was projected that that lease was going to extend past
Right.
the airport's lease with the county. So the county had to approve the extension of that contract with that lease agreement with Costco beyond our pre-existing lease with the Airport Commission. So I think, and Dean will probably remember, and Nate may remember, the fact that we actually had discussion about the fact that even though our current lease with the Airport Commission expired in 2025 or something, the lease with Costco extended into 2030 or something like that beyond that. So, we are aware of the fact that, there is an end date with our lease with the Airport Commission, but the county, it did in fact enter into a lease agreement that extended beyond that point for the Costco development.
Commissioner LaPointe?
Okay. First of all, I'd say I'd like to agree with Sonny's earlier point. If the FAA said, and that's what I'm being told, and I have no reason to doubt what I've been told, and I've seen the documents, their attorney was there, that they had no choice in doing what they did. So that's I don't need any further discussion or understanding on my part. The second thing is, I don't have any desire to micromanage that organization. We appoint that board. They're very professional. These are sharp people on that board. They've got a very strong, in my term, management team. I was very impressed with their management team. And you got the FAA and the state and a ton of regulatories looking at what they're doing, making sure they're in total compliance. I can't add anything to that equation. I think having a representative here attending their meeting, which Rob is on that, if a commissioner has something specific they would like more information on for their own reasons, certainly make a request to our representative or attend the meeting. I don't, again, I go back to, I can't envision this board participating into the weeds in the detail on how they run that airport. When you look at all of the restrictions and all the regulations they have to comply with. So as far as I'm concerned, this was, it was worthwhile to bring this forward to this board because we didn't participate. We weren't here when this was all went down last year. So I have no desire to dig any deeper into the details as some do, but they're more than welcome to participate. But I got all, in the 2-hour meeting I had and looking at the detail they presented and the charts they had, I had all the information I need.
Okay, Commissioner Hundley?
So to your point about, if you've seen the FAA documents, for instance, that would be terrific. It's that kind of thing. Because, for instance, like the question of we couldn't extend it past 3 Mile because the FAA wouldn't let us because that hill is too big. It may be true. I mean, that may be absolutely true. But like, I lived in New York, and they've got LaGuardia in Queens, right? And like, you got skyscrapers right there. I lived in Switzerland. They had airports where the Alps were right there, and you had to take off almost vertically, and they were able to figure it out. So some of these things that they're leaning on, like where the reasons are always, the FAA is making us do it. Okay, but just like, let us see that. Like, show it to us proactively instead of, because it just feels, you know, I know I've made kind of a thing about trust, and I think we're getting good. Like, I think we've had like 7 zeros on all of our, but we're getting,
jinx it.
right? I know, don't jinx it. No, but I know, but I'm just saying, like, that stuff takes time to build, and like, I don't know these players at the airport, and I know that they're professional and everything, but I just like, give me something that I can hang my hat on, and let's just have. I get that the nature of that beast is pretty hands off. I'm not running an airport. On the other hand, hey, if we're having to sublease Costco rentals so that rental can go to the airport because the airport needs to be self-sufficient, then basically what we're saying is that the airport isn't self-sufficient, which is neither here nor there. It's just something that we should be honest with ourselves about. Because if I allot enough land to my, pencil museum, and I can rent out all the land, then I can make lots of money on my pencil museum, even though nobody ever attends. You know what I mean? Like, just if we're going to make decisions about transportation, there's a bunch of stuff in there, and I don't want to tell the airport how to run an airport, but I also just, there's enough there that I kept feeling in my conversations like I'm being told, hey, it's nothing we can do about it. I just need to get there to trust that, and so seeing some of those documents would certainly help, because some of those things don't make sense from my own personal experience.
Okay, I'm going to take an opportunity to comment that I agree, and I'm happy to see commissioners dig into stuff and want to get the info. A lot of times stuff just seems to pass through us, and it's impossible to completely understand everything, and that's why we have appointments to different boards. But looking at the airport authority, we've got maybe a dozen or two similar entities, things like Beta that we're a part of, things like the Road Commission, the Area Agency on Aging, all these things that we are appointed to, and we can't possibly micromanage all of that, and that's why we have the system we do. I encourage commissioners to dig in, and I invite you to contact me with questions, or the airport administration, because that's where I'll send them anyways. But anytime I can help understanding. I think it's great that our commissioners understand that we can go to staff and we can ask questions. We're not their boss individually. As a whole, we're Nate's boss and he's their boss. So, and we're doing a great job with that. And I'd like to keep that trend of having the openness of being able to go and get information. If we're, as a board, going to dig into an agency, I can think of other agencies that we might want to relook at our relationships that, to me, seem a little more pressing than the airport even. What we're finding, digging in, is that they're doing their job. And a few more documents will confirm that, and those, I believe, will be coming. But I don't want to, this board has some work to do yet. We've got a pension obligation that I think needs a little more attention, and we haven't even done a strategic planning session yet, and it seems like this stuff kind of keeps taking center stage away from being a little more organized, and I'd like to see us head in the direction of a strategic plan so that we're all on the same page and that our staff knows what's expected of them from this board. So that said, Sonny was next.
I guess just a quick thing to Bryce's point. We're in a very unique situation here. Communities our size, communities smaller than us, and communities a lot larger than us have to subsidize their airports by big ticket numbers. We are so fortunate here to be in a situation where our airport operates on its own. It has become a very, very regional facility, and it's evolving and developing on almost a daily basis. That is so unique for a community our size, and even to communities a lot bigger than ours, that our airport is able to function on its own and is self-sufficient. It's pretty much unheard of.
And to that point, Sonny, everybody we've talked to over the last 7-8 months about economic development know that airport is critical to the region. And if you look at all the great things that Cherry Capital Airport does, they brought in new flights to, most recently, Sarasota, if I'm not mistaken, weekly flights to Florida. They've expanded the runway to allow bigger jets to land because they're bumping up to 15 passengers a day. Because planes couldn't get off the ground during the warmer temperatures. So economic development is going to be impacted greatly by the improvements at the airport. The airport staff, the airport commission are part of those discussions. So you take the good with the bad. They're doing a great job. I've not heard any complaints about the way the airport's been managed itself in terms of being completely funded by their own activity. We do not have a county appropriation to the airport at all and haven't for 25+ years.
But they make $170,000 in rent from Costco. I mean, that essentially is an appropriation if it's, you know what I'm saying?
But the county but the city gets $80,000 in taxes and we get $36,000 in taxes because Costco is there.
I see. All right.
All right, so yes, it is land owned by the counties, Grand Traverse and Leelanau County, but the airport does it in turn, they're essentially self-sufficient. They're outside of our appropriation. So key to that is non-aeronautic activity. You will hear Mr. Baldwin, he said it here at this podium last month, and you'll hear Mr. Klein say that it is essential for the survival of that airport in the current model to enhance non-aeronautic activity. So yes, there is going to be commercial development. They don't have any bidders, they don't have any written down contracts, but they have people who are interested in having commercial enterprises at the airport. I think that's a good thing. So it's going to continue the way the improvements that the airport wants to have, and it's not going to come off the county's doors.
Okay. Mr. Kafia.
Thank you. So I agree with Mr. LaPointe and Mr. Henschel that it is not our job to micromanage the airport or the pavilions or Beta or any of these entities. So I want to be really clear that I am not advocating that we try to tell Kevin Klein how to do his job, and I don't know how to fly an airplane, right? And I don't know how to design runways. That is. I want to be clear that is not what I'm suggesting. What I am suggesting is where there are non-aeronautical activities happening in the perimeter, in prime real estate in the middle of our city and on county-owned property, that we just be clear on what is happening and try to encourage proactive communication with the public. And I do disagree that I think more could and should have been done, including them coming and letting the landlords know what they're getting ready, that they're getting ready to clear cut in a clear and transparent fashion. And so that's what I'm advocating for. People care about big box stores going in and near the city. They care about clear cutting. And so I'm just advocating that we do our due diligence as stewards of those resources, not that we try to tell I love our airport. It's awesome. It's a great, great space and a huge economic driver. So there's a difference. Only other thing, I agree with you, Mr. Chairman. I've been asking since November that we have a strategic planning session. I cannot wait. I think it's incredibly important for this body to get together and really think big picture. Where are we trying to go? What is our vision? So I agree with you.
Okay, last
My
one,
last
Gordon,
comment.
Because we've been at this an hour. I'm going to close discussion if there's no
My
motion.
last comment, they did let the landlord know. But we weren't on that board.
There was no presentation whatsoever. There was some paper given to our administrator, and I think that's different. They could have sat down with us like they did the Record Eagle, and they didn't. And I'm asking them.
No, I'm just saying,
to improve
you
on
made
that.
excuse me.
Sure.
You made a comment, they didn't let the landlord know. They did let the landlord know. It was the county prior to the cutting you were talking about, and Costco and all that. It's just, we came in after the fact, and they didn't come back and say, here's a new board, 5 new members, we better make sure they know. I mean, they did, it could have been done more, but when I looked at it, and that was a concern I had when I went there, that was my number one thing is, why weren't you more proactive? And when they laid it out, I said, I can't criticize anything you did.
Okay, I'm going to close the topic if there's no motions. We are on to second public comment. If any members of the public wish to speak, approach the podium now. Say your name and where you're from. Just remind you, if you've already spoken on a topic, that one's off limits. You may speak once per topic, per our board rules.
My name is Ted Iorio.
Good morning.
I'm also Gretchen's husband. That won't add anything to it, but I thought you should know that. I didn't plan to make any comment, but listening to this dialogue, you know, when the trees that were cut were laying there and we drove by, my wife said something about, you know, look at what happened here. So let's go to the internet and let's check it out. So we get on the internet, get the minutes of the board, not your board, the aeronautical board, and it says we're going to do these things, and it doesn't cite the FAA code that says this is why this has got to be clear cut. And then it talks about, and the code requires in the FAA, and I'm not an FAA attorney, indicates that the actions taken have to deal with aeronautical problems. And then when we saw the commercial sign, and we said, well, what's the commercial sign all about? And we looked at the minutes again. You know, there's no reference on it in regard to that. So that, of course, causes concern. That's why I got some people here worried about and concerned about what's going on here. And the way this is set up, it's almost like Pontius Pilate. I use that term because you guys like invocations. That, well, we gave the responsibility to the airport authority, and the airport authority will try to get to the Record Eagle, but that didn't work. And this is a big issue up here. People that come up here for the trees, the birds, the water, and, you know, whatever. So that's what is the concern. And you can talk amongst yourselves about how you want to deal with the commission, but I'll tell you, you got that authority coming up, and there's a concern out there that is this going to be another way to bucket to the authority? That doesn't mean anybody wants to micromanage, but is clear cutting required by the FAA for commercial enterprise on the property that the county owns? Who knows? So what do we want to do? We want to talk to Klein. We call Klein, we leave word, emails are sent, what's the information, provide us the data, we can look at it. If the data says, I won't use the term Trump, but if the FAA trumps anything we can do in regard to legislation, these people out here are bright enough to understand that. We want to know. You know, some people want to know what the Mueller report is. You're giving us a summary, and you don't know yourselves because You haven't really been involved with it other than the extent you're not going to micromanage it. We want to see the data. What's so difficult about that? Why should any commissioner be upset that the public comes and wants to raise questions about it? So show us. Maybe we want to be like St. Thomas. We want to put our hands in the wounds to make sure that's who's there.
Thank you,
So
sir.
we want to see the
Time-
information.
yeah.
So try to accept that.
Time's
The
up.
public wants to participate.
Thank you very much. Anyone else for public comment?
Hello again, Dave Petro of Interlochen. I don't know if you want to say this is about the airport, but it's not about the tree cutting and things like that. Another thing that popped up in the paper a few days ago, this is a new ordinance, as it's written here. The Cherry Capital Airport soliciting, picketing, signature gathering, and leafleting policy. I don't know that we've had a problem out there, but somebody is like trying to preempt public having any say in what's going on, or using, our public lands for things like freedom of speech. And I don't know if this is a sign of things to come. I mean, it's a worrisome thing when, be it township, counties, or national legislatures are afraid of the people. This is something to worry about. Again, I started out, the first comment was about leaning, decision-making should lean towards we the people, not towards, be it Costco or something else. Tree cutting and stuff like that is only a symptom of what's going on here. It's like, we will do everything we can to encourage business. It's good for us to have bigger runways and more jets and stuff like that. I don't think so. I mean, it's, again, we're mowing down neighborhoods to provide for business, and that's in commercial, and that's wrong. So I thank you.
Thank you, Dave. Anybody else?
Tom Emmett again, 9430 Peninsula Drive. I wholeheartedly agree with this gentleman right here in the checkered or the plaid shirt. I also agree with several of the commissioners that there should have been more transparency. I mean, we the public deserve to know or gain as much information as we possibly can. And that's why we attend these meetings. And if representatives from the airport or whatever having to do with the airport are not present, then we're not getting firsthand information. And lastly, because I'm going to make this short, and this does have to do with this particular subject, but I'd like to point out that there's about 30-some seats here that are empty because of the meetings being at 8 o'clock in the morning. Those seats would be filled if these meetings were at 5:30 or whenever they used to be. I mean, come on. We need public input. We need people here to attend these meetings and listen to what's being said and offer their input. Thank you.
Anyone else for public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on the agenda. We are on Commissioner and Department reports. Start with staff. Any department reports? Anything to share?
Only one follow-up. We met yesterday with Mr. Rizzo of the DHHS board. If you recall, he asked us to complete a resolution to send to the state of Michigan about their central intake. Yesterday, we met with him, and he reported that there has been a significant improvement in the activities surrounding that central intake service. And he heard that from his board meeting and in a report, and he has encouraged us to hold off for 3 months. And let's watch how this works, because there has apparently been effort directed by the new director of DHHS to fix the problem, and it appears to be working. So he would like to hold off on the resolution if at all possible.
Yeah, I attended the meeting, and it is much improved, but the system hasn't improved. They've been given a workaround.
Okay.
So we'll still have to wait. They stopped the rollout because it still is not successful, the way it's been implemented. So it's encouraging that they've come up with a workaround, but it's certainly not utilizing the system in the manner in which it was designed.
We discussed that concern with Mr. Izzo yesterday, saying, what happens when this rolls out statewide? They focused it on a smaller area, a smaller population. They encourage significant problems, so what happens when they roll it out? We asked him if he felt that we should continue with the resolution, and he really did think that we should give it 3 more months prior to us doing that. I just didn't want you to know or not know that we're not sending that resolution. And if the board wishes to proceed, we can proceed.
No, I would concur with
Okay.
his wishes.
We'll consider it on hold.
Thank you.
Okay, any commissioner reports? Let's just start at Gordy and work down the line.
Attended, well, the Department of Veterans Affairs, I've been really impressed with Michael Roof, the new director. He produces a lot of reports, a lot of data that I think was missing in the past. One of the issues they face is one of the things they're trying to do is you have an outreach program, get into different areas versus just hope people will come into their office. And one of the issues they had, they were running a outreach program in a grade school, and they've run into all kinds of difficulties because of having adults in grade schools and on and on and on. So I've contacted both East Bay and Whitewater to see if their facilities would be available out in that region. And they both said yes, so we'll be looking at that. So they got a good board, moving right along.
Okay. Commissioner Jewett, anything to report?
Nothing this month.
Okay. Commissioner Wheelock?
It's very early in the month. My meetings,
Yeah, it
most
is.
of them haven't been canceled. I did receive notice that the CJCC meeting for this month is being canceled due to the fact that the bond information that was on the agenda has not been developed yet, so we can't have that meeting. I think that's it for right now.
Okay.
You
Commissioner
want to
Kofia?
tag team on the MAC conference report, or you give
Um,
mine, you give yours?
However you
Okay.
want to do it.
All right, well, a couple things. I was able to attend the city commission meeting on, was that Monday? Oh, can't keep track of the days. They had a lot of discussion about trees as well, and a lot of discussion about the Ironman race coming up here in the city of Traverse City. And hopefully everybody already knows, but the work on 8th Street has been moved up and will start in May. So just start making your plans for avoiding 8th Street as a way to get across town. It's long-needed improvements, but it's going to be a short-term headache probably for folks. I live right over there and usually do 8th Street, so I'll have to figure that out. I am going to try to make the first part of the Area Agency on Aging tomorrow. Unfortunately, I have a work commitment downstate, and so if I'm able to go, I won't be able to be there the whole time, which is really too bad because they canceled the one in February that I showed up to, and I was the only one there because of weather. So, and I hope to attend the Peninsula Township Board meeting this month and the Road Commission as well. Coming up in May, but with the information I was able to bring back from the NACO conference on the complete count, the census information, the township clerks are meeting and are really interested in that topic, and so I will be going to share what I learned, and I know the chairman also has met with someone from the census, so happy to share billing if you'd like and chat with them about that. The chairman and I were the two members of our board who went to the Michigan Association of Counties conference in Lansing. It was a legislative conference was that a week ago?
It was last week, yeah.
Wow, feels like a longer time ago. And I'll just quickly, it's not nearly as long of a list this time because it was a shorter, like half days, and then one full day. The sessions I was able to go to, and again, I extend the offer of all of my notes. I went to a session on the PFAS crisis in Michigan. We have one of now over 40 sites in Michigan that have been identified. The one over in Blair Township, which our health department has been working with the community there on addressing that. I attended a panel by energy companies on trends in the energy industry, and I'm going to revisit that really briefly. I attended a report reports by the MAC and NACO presidents on just sort of state and national trends. Our state Supreme Court Chief Justice Bridget McCormack led a really informative panel that was sort of an echo of something I heard at NACO as well, and it's about pretrial jail diversion, working with people with mental health issues and other things to maybe not have them spending so much time incarcerated, particularly if they can't afford to make bail. So that was a really informative presentation. And then Governor Whitmer made a presentation to the body on her budget. Something about fixing the damn roads, I think she mentioned. Then there was a ACEs presentation, Adverse Childhood Experiences, presentation by several organizations that work with families and children. Also really good information that, again, happy to share. And a session that got very lively, almost too lively, on the ramifications for municipalities with now the vote to legalize marijuana. Discussions of revenue and what that will mean for local municipalities, including counties. Some of the revenue will end up coming to us, as well as developing regulations. And yeah, people were quite exercised for and against this whole thing, as you might expect. And that was by the former attorney for the state legislature. So, and then I went to a caucus. I missed the one that you went to. So the energy piece, I just have a couple quick notes from the panel of energy company representatives. One of the things that was interesting from the rep from Consumers Energy is he mentioned that consumers not building any more fossil fuel plants, that solar is gonna be the energy source of choice, and by 2040, the last coal plant for consumers will go offline. They're looking to scatter solar arrays around the state. And are looking really for counties that are open and receptive to that idea, because he said where that local buy-in isn't there, this is a quote from my notes, there's a quote, very well organized anti-renewables group or several groups out there, and they come to every renewable project we do and really spread, again, direct quote, propaganda, to try to oppose it. And so the statement by the gentleman from Consumers was, we would really want to make sure that communities are open to renewable energy sites, and that there is that buy-in, and that they're looking for that. So maybe something we can think about. I know we already have some, so I'm assuming we're somewhat open to it. And then just some from the crowd, a couple of commissioners from Huron and Gratiot County, who I'm going to follow up with, sort of interrupted his presentation to say this is all great, but it's only great if the energy companies then actually pay their taxes and don't do tax tribunal appeals to not pay in all that revenue back to the local municipalities. So I thought, I'm gonna reach out to these commissioners from these counties and just learn from what they've experienced, because if we do go down that route, I believe in learning from other people's, not mistakes, but challenges that they've gone through. So, yeah, that's a quick and dirty about the MAC conference.
All right, Commissioner Hundley.
So I've had the Commission on Aging yesterday. They are going to be coming to us in the next meeting or two. They've got a couple of different transportation programs. One's vouchers for cabs, one's this Coast Bus. The Coast Bus is a pretty new program, but they've been hit with a kind of a change in the terms from Beta, in that the cost was not the original agreement wasn't covering Beta's cost. So that's something that they're preparing a detailed presentation on, but actually the data that they had, I think, on the usage of the Coast Bus program versus the cabs and that sort of thing makes it, the net impact to their budget is very minimal, because anyway, you'll see the presentation, but just kind of to give you a forewarning, the net impact on the budget is very minimal, but it looks like the Coast Bus program is definitely worth doing, and I think they've got a pretty good plan on how to move forward with that for the next year at least, to see how it goes. And the other one was Networks Northwest, which was Monday. Jason Allen came. He's representing the USDA now. He handed us a summary of like 47 different programs. I gave a copy to each of the commissioners. There were so many. There's economic development. There's some housing grants and loans. There's power, to get power companies money to get power companies, smart meters all the way throughout their entire networks, which could be a good, powerful program. Anyway, there's a bunch of things, and I thought the best thing to do was just give everybody a copy, because you can see if there's something in there that, from his explanation, basically any of our communities up here qualify, because they count as rural, because something, either a township or a village, is less than 20,000, so maybe not the county as a whole, but the individual townships can apply for some of these things. So I think there's probably some good stuff in there. I'm also going to try and get this to the Garfield Township meeting, at least, see, just disseminate it as much as I can. So that's it.
Yeah, he actually, just to tail on that real quick, I talked to Jason Allen recently. He mentioned the solar panels at the airport.
Okay.
There's a program that could
Right.
finance, the airport itself doesn't want to own the panels.
Mhm.
We're looking for someone to come in and rent the land
Right.
based on an arrangement, but there's programs available for that too.
Yeah. Yep.
Mr. Klaus?
I'm good.
You're good? All right.
Rob,
Yeah.
I went first, I wasn't prepared.
Yeah, it's all right.
Got it. Just two quick things.
I was giving myself time, actually.
Okay, think about it. We've got the trip later this month to go to Wexford Jail. I assume that's still on. Hopefully, we'll all will go. Along that line, the alternative to jail, which is an issue, is the sobriety court and the drug court. I actually went to not that I had to, but I went to drug court yesterday and sat through it. When we get into the topic of discussing jail and alternatives and on, suggest you all, they're every Tuesday at 8:15. You can just walk in. They go by pretty quick. Thought they did a great job. I was really impressed. They certainly, it's a diversion program, but they keep these folks on a very, very tight tether. So I think it's very worthwhile. The other thing just I should mention is four of the commissioners here represent districts in East Bay, Acme, Whitewater. Metro Fire is getting very little press on what's going on there, but there was a lot of press when rural fire broke up. Everybody went their separate ways. Well, that's being discussed, as you probably know, with Metro, an organization that's gotten nothing but accolades on the service they provide, the leverage you get out of having three entities combined under one authority to run it. And for whatever reason, and I'm not optimistic. They're going to be going to mediation, but I'm not optimistic. And they very well may break up. And that means I can guarantee you for the money spent, we'll get less service because of the leverage they've got. So if you have any, those of us in those townships, talk to some of the folks and try to encourage them to look long and hard before they try to break that organization up.
That actually leads perfectly into my report, because one of my favorite parts of going to Michigan Association of Counties conferences is meeting the commissioners from other counties and the staff. Michigan has 83 counties ranging from around 10,000 people to well over 1 million. And out of those 83 counties, Grand Traverse County has less than 100,000 people, but shines like a star. They have a vendors area at the conference for people that provide services to counties. And walking around there, one was an emergency services, actually it was a state, Department of the State, but they had a big screen, and right on there is Pat Parker, the chief of GT Metro. And I walk around and I talk to these people, and they know our department people and know them well and respect them. And you mentioned our courts. Our courts are a shining star in the state of Michigan for those specialty courts that keep people out of jail, that are willing to work on their problems rather than just go to jail for having an addiction. So that I'm so happy to be in Grand Traverse County. I mean, I'm proud of all of our staff and all of our people that go the extra mile to be very good at what they do. I mean, it's still government. There's always going to be our issues, but when you grade on the curve, we're way ahead of the curve in Grand Traverse County in a lot of ways, and I'm really proud of that. I talked to a lot of. I'm only going to give part of my my report now because I haven't actually debriefed with staff yet, but I got a lot of ideas. Just talking to the different types of counties out there. I found out there's a county that's about half our size that operates on purpose without an administrator. I thought that was interesting. Between the clerk and the chair, they handle day-to-day stuff.
Do they have a deputy administrator?
No. It's Hillsdale County. I was really surprised. I'm like, how do you guys do that? Because there's counties like much smaller than Hillsdale that have awesome administrators. It was, but
there are also counties that have commissioners that are full-time jobs.
Yeah,
You know,
well,
and that's a significant difference too.
This one seems that way sometimes. But that's probably partially my fault too.
Look at their success rates.
Anyway, just a lot of
Things they do for their
I spent a lot of time just kind of comparing how we do business to how other counties do business, and one of the things I asked around was like meeting times, and they're all over the board. I went and looked at the 8 largest counties in Michigan, and out of those 8, 3 of them have evening meetings, and this isn't a partisan issue because most of those are Democrat strongholds, so it's not like Republicans like the morning and Democrats like the night. It's whatever works for the commissioners. About half the counties have evening meetings and half don't. And invocations are very common. Not every county does it. So a lot of the stuff that we've had criticism over, I found talking to other counties and other commissioners, it's common stuff. And a lot of our board rules that have been kind of controversial, I mean, yeah, we have differing opinions, but we're still well within the realm of normal for a county. Other than that, I talked to one county about their morgue because we've been talking about a morgue. There was a state program they used a few years ago to build it. That program's no longer there. So that's the kind of stuff I need to kind of debrief with staff on some of the thoughts and notions in my head before I, make an opinion about it. But other than that, it is the beginning of the month. We got the rest of our meetings yet to come, and that's pretty much all I have. Anybody else?
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
May I just, and I don't mean to overstep at all, but with our ad hoc, I just wanted to let the public know that our ad hoc on our ethics policy is meeting next Wednesday, 8 a.m. Upstairs in the conference room. So, and it's open to the public. So that's happening kind of because we're not having a study session. So just wanted to mention that you're participating in that.
All right. One last chance, staff. You miss anything? Nope. All right. Notices. We have board member basics, April 11th at 1 p.m. And that is
That's
Mr.
me.
Solon. All right. And who is that open to?
Open to the public.
Okay.
It is specifically targeted to members of boards and commissions, as well as township boards. So it's open to all of them and targeted towards them. It will be informative for them, but it is open to the public.
All right, so all townships and cities, villages, authorities, whatever.
It was part of last week's community corrections packet also.
All right. And then we have emergency management for elected officials. That is for our board. That is a staff-led. Is that open meeting or is that just a staff-led meeting?
This is staff-led.
Okay. So that one will just be a staff-led meeting. In times of emergency, state law looks to elected officials to run things. So that's what that's about. So be prepared. Commissioner Hundley, what do we do with this flood? All right. We have closed session is canceled. And we're at adjournment.
We are adjourned.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You know, sign.